So, like, when I first started the brand, the examples that I really was inspired by was, like, people like Lee McQueen and because, of course, he was, I guess, similar sort of class. I think classism was more prominent thing of my worries than, like, my race. But of course, it did affect me, so I wouldn't ignore, like, those experiences. But how was your experience with starting a business and being a Black woman?
I never thought about it. I just went about and do the work. And quite frankly, it's not until after I'd stopped doing a lot of productions and people mention it, but throughout my career, I've never ever focused on thinking that I would never achieve anything because of the colour of my skin. Mm-hmm. I've always been very comfortable that way. First of all, I was the first in my family to go to university. Mm-hmm. And when my grandfather and my mother probably were suggesting to go to have education, I don't think they were probably thinking of fashion.
Yeah.
Because it's not such a secure business. But for me, I was quite driven. That's exactly what I want to do. But I know I had to work extra hard for that. It'd be good, Bianca, to know how you went about going into business today as a young person.
So it was really interesting experience. So when I graduated from Kingston, I was always, like, very determined. I was like, let me reach out to people I was using Instagram and, like, Facebook at one point to, like, find people where I could probably put myself out there. Because when I went to Kingston, a lot of the projects were very much, like, industry based. So you would do projects like H&M and Banana Republic and all the rest of it. And I'll make it to, like, top, like, 10, and I wouldn't get the internship. So I was like, maybe I should just create my own lane and, like, just start my own business. So I think it was just like it kind of started from an insecurity, thinking that maybe after I graduate, I might not have opportunities. So I wanted to create opportunities for myself and see if the companies would come to me if I did that for myself. You mentioned that you was the only Black person in your year, or is it the whole of university?
At Trent, I was the first Black student to graduate with a BA in fashion and textiles. Is that my book?
Yeah. It's actually amazing. I was like, it's such a good picture. When was this and where was this taken?
Yeah, well, the book, the cover image was taken in 1975, but the book was published in 2018. It documents 70 years of British Caribbean fashion. And I wrote that book in desperation, really, because I was doing some research and going to the library and looking up on the internet, and I didn't see any books relating to British Caribbean fashion. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to publish one, wrote it and published it. My favourite era was really the 70s, 60s and the 70s. And it was with the Windrush generation, it's how they wore the clothes in that way. It's how they coordinated, sort of fashion as such. So I do think that contribution is huge. And in a sense, when we young people now who are looking back at the Windrush generation now, I've noticed that they've brought back the Zoot suit. It's very much come back into vogue, where it was the protest suit. It was known as the protest suit in America, where they had the very long jackets and very wide leg trousers. And recently, there are tailors now are making that for young men now. So that is shown how it's influencing the young people today. How was you influenced by textiles and fashion from that Windrush area? How did you use that in your collections?
So, like, when I first was able to do, like, my own independent project at Kingston, I really wanted to tell the story of, like, where my family were from and, like, how that kind of influenced, like, my style of drawing and I guess putting myself in my work, which I found, like, really hard at the time. So going back and doing that research, it was really important for me, and, like, seeing, like, the tailoring aspect of things. And I was saying that my great aunt, she used to sell lace on a market stall, which she owned. So like working with like the sort of like feminine fabrics is what really influenced me with like using women's wear stuff into menswear.
Yeah, that's great. Lovely.
Yeah, some really, really, really inspiring images in here. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much things to actually look back on. But it would be so interesting to know, well, like, what was it like having a shop back then?
The La Paz shops, it was a hair, beauty and retail shop. And it was a great opportunity actually to invest in a place where you could have sort of black people to come in and it was tasteful. You know, it was well done up.
Yeah.
And basically they could feel comfortable in it, and or you know the stylists could feel proud of their heritage in that way. What is it like for you now as a designer? How have you approached it?
It's so interesting because I think before you were saying that it's quite, back then it was really hard. I feel like brick and mortar is like it's a really good way to kind of touch the customer base, whereas now it's a bit more like you'll have to have the brick and mortar, then you also need to have your online covered really well.
I think the business side of it for many people in going into it was always very scary, especially if you didn't get that support in your community. That was so important.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Do you get that support now?
Yeah, no, I definitely think people support me quite a lot. So even when I was doing my masters, I had like a very short amount of time to kind of like I guess raise some money for it. And a lot of people supported me in my community to help me get there, and like posting on Twitter and stuff like that. And like I always have people that randomly come up to me and remember that I used to do things like that on the internet. And I think people really do appreciate me being visible and seeing, I guess, a black woman doing menswear and doing menswear in a luxury fashion sense, because there's not many people that are a part of that industry that are able to show in Paris and be in mainstream media publications and stuff and do all the big events. So I'm very proud of that.
So how did you come up with each of your collections?
Just really wanted to show more of myself in my work and like what I was interested in. So I feel like there's not one way of telling a Caribbean story, one way of telling someone's history within fashion. And I like this idea of like kind of using art with conceptualizing my heritage. So I did this one collection where it was based on like hard food. So like things being very much starchy and like natural fabrics and things like that, and then like playing with the prints and the colours. There's just so much history that I feel like it'd be interesting for people to know about in the luxury industry. So I just really enjoy researching that part. So it'd be great to like know like what was your earliest memories in Jamaica?
I left Jamaica when I was 7, and that was in 1959. And I think probably the greatest memory was that I was left behind and my great-grandparents looked after me when my mother came to England. And it was always taking us to Spanish Town to have our pictures taken.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
And those are pictures that would be sent to our parents in England.
Yeah.
And they, in return, would take pictures and send back to us.
Some of my family members have some of those pictures and they're always like so serious.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to smile.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember my great-grandmother, she would sort of, you know, it was a typical, you part your hair in the middle, 2 bows at the side, and you must look serious. You know, that was what it was.
In what way would you say the Windrush influenced businesses?
I think it influenced it on many levels, in the sense that we were actually very, very driven. And because when we came, we felt that we were coming to the motherland, you know, to support the country that was devastated after the war.
Yeah.
We put all our efforts into building the country and helping a lot of business flourish in this country, whether or not it's helping to build huge sort of social housing estates, whether or not it's working in shops, whether or not it's working in the NHS.
Yeah.
You know, these are great, a lot of Caribbean people contributed to, you know, to many of these industries. What is the future for Bianca Saunders in the industry, and what impact do you want to leave behind? What's your legacy?
I definitely have dreams to have my own shop one day. So it's really inspiring to know that you've had like two in like really prominent areas. But when I first started the brand, it was more based on getting department stores to buy into my brand. So now it's like at like 37 stores across the globe. So my next goal is to make people come directly to me over the internet.